In Sudan, the two warring military factions have agreed to a 5-day extension of a ceasefire agreement. New heavy clashes and airstrikes in the capital, though, have thrown doubts on the effectiveness of the truce that's designed to ease a humanitarian crisis there. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia, who brokered the deal, said the ceasefire has not been perfect, but it has allowed the delivery of aid to an estimated 2 million people. Well, to talk more about that with me now, let's bring in Mathilde Vu. You are the Advocacy Manager in Sudan for the Norwegian Refugee Council. You're now in Nairobi, but you were in Sudan just before the conflict began. What is the humanitarian situation like now in Sudan?
It's catastrophic. It was really terrible 2 months ago before this all started, and now we're facing really an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. We have something like 18 million people in need of humanitarian assistance, more than 1 million people displaced, 300,000 across the borders towards Chad, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the likes. And honestly, across the country, we keep on seeing people trying to flee Khartoum, and they flee with nothing. They flee with trauma. And it's extremely concerning to see how this country is going.
So what about these comments from the U.S. and Saudi Arabia who say that they have been able to deliver aid to some estimated 2 million people there? Is no aid getting in at all?
There is aid getting in. It's just not enough. Like my organization, for example, we are right now working in White Nile and Gedaref, meaning basically close to the South Sudanese border and close to the Ethiopian border. And so we're receiving every day new people fleeing Khartoum, sometimes Sudanese and sometimes refugees, because there was a lot of refugees in Khartoum. They're now trying to flee again. And, the aid that we can give is something, but it's very little compared to what the needs are. Like we managed to distribute, for example, food to some of the people displaced. We managed to distribute blankets, mattresses, and so on. But I'm talking about people who've lost everything, who've seen their homes bombarded, who've seen their schools bombarded, who haven't seen a doctor for like weeks. And where basically the entire country is seeing like a collapse of everything, every basic services. So the aid is coming, it's coming slowly. There is also a lot of logistical issues that are preventing aids from, being at scales. It's difficult to get supplies into the country. There's been no bank open since basically the 15th of April, so it means there's no cash inside the country to buy things for us to then, deliver assistance. And in general, obviously, there's a lot of parts of the countries that are completely inaccessible. Khartoum, Darfur, all those places have seen major attacks on civilians and conflict are just right now too dangerous for us to work in.
And there's another problem as well, I believe, and that is that the weather's about to change. The rainy season is almost here. What kind of problems will that bring?
It's a crisis within a crisis. Every year, Sudan is being exposed to major flooding. And what we expect right now is that basically the center, Khartoum, but also the south and the west, so basically the places where people are fleeing to and the places where there is major violence are going to have very heavy rain. And when I'm talking heavy rains, it's rains that can destroy homes. And a lot of places such as Darfur, for example, a lot of people do not have homes anymore. It's been burned down. It's been burned down over the past 3 weeks. They're hiding on the tents right now or on the makeshift shelter. These are not going to survive the heavy flooding. And we're talking about also like a lot of sanitary risks. There's a lot of risk of cholera or any other disease like this, malaria and so on. We're heading towards a very complicated months.
And you were talking about a problem within a problem in regard to the rainy season. That can also be true of the refugee question. There was already a big refugee population inside Sudan from other conflicts. What's happening to those refugees now?
No, you're right. Actually, it's not really known, but Sudan was the second country in Africa hosting the largest number of refugees. I think it was close to 1 million people. And right now, these are people who are forced to flee. So these are people who went to Sudan, fleeing usually extreme violence in South Sudan or in Ethiopia or in Eritrea, for example, trying to find a safe haven in Khartoum and now having to flee again. Some of them are pushed back, are forced back, to the country that they fled. A lot of people who are crossing right now onto South Sudan are South Sudanese returnees who did not plan on coming back, and they have nothing. They're already extremely vulnerable. They had already like a very, very difficult living condition. And right now, the ones that we're seeing in White Nile, they're living on the blankets in the open, like it's 40 degrees during the day. And they're accumulating right now towards the border, going back to South Sudan and to a very, very uncertain future.
Mathilde, thank you for taking the time to speak to us. Mathilde Vu, there, the Advocacy Manager for Sudan for the Norwegian Refugee Council. Thank you.